This episode of the Hope Podcast is brought to us by the Spotlight Project. The Spotlight Project is a fantastic organization run by fantastic people with the mission of raising employment for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities. They create and sell beautiful jewelry, and each individual they employ has an intellectual or developmental disability and a unique story to tell. You can visit them at thespotlightprojectco.com. Again, thespotlightprojectco.com. Use the coupon code HOPE, H-O-P-E. Again, use the coupon code HOPE for 15% off your order. We have a really great show today with Daryl Davis. Daryl is a professional musician, author, and public speaker who's best known for infiltrating the top levels of the KKK. Daryl's a black man, and a really great story, really great conversation on beliefs and on race relations in America today. If you guys enjoy the show today, if you could please leave us a review and subscribe to the podcast, would help us out a lot. And with that, we'll turn it over to Daryl to tell his story.
Welcome everyone to the Hope Podcast. Really, really blessed to be joined by a great man today, Daryl Davis. And Daryl, if you just want to kind of start and kind of run through the story, start at the childhood where you grew up and your experiences then.
Sure. Well, I'm 62 years of age right now, but as a kid, I was a child of parents in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I grew up as an American embassy brat, going to different countries every 2 years and living there, and then coming back home at the end of the 2 years, back home here to the States for a few months, maybe a year, and then being reassigned overseas. So when I was overseas in the early 1960s, my classes over there, my school classes in elementary school and stuff, were filled with other kids from all over the world, because anybody who had an embassy in those countries, all of their kids went to the same school. So my classroom looked like a little United Nations of little kids. And when I would return home here to my own country, I would either be in all black schools or all black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. And there was not the amount of diversity that I had overseas. Overseas, I mean, there were kids from Japan, Nigeria, Russia, France, Germany, you name it, they were there. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't see that over here. So literally, when I was overseas, I was living, a bunch of years into the future, because that scenario had yet to come here. And one of the times when we came back from an assignment overseas, I was age 10. And I was in a school in which I was one of two black kids in the entire school. There was a little black girl in second grade. I was in fourth grade. So, I rarely saw her except for lunchtime or recess. And most of my guys were fourth and fifth grade, fourth and fifth graders. And the guys were Cub Scouts, and they invited me to join. So I joined the Cub Scouts, and we had a parade one day in which I was the only black participant. And all the spectators along the sidewalk were happy, except for 4 or 5 of them somewhere down the parade route who began throwing things at me. And I did not understand it. I got hit in the face and in the side. And my scout leaders, huddled over me with their bodies to protect me and escorted me out of the danger. But they never told me why this was happening. And when I got home, my parents who were not at the march were asking me, how did I fall down and get all scraped up? Because, they were cleaning me up and putting Band-Aids on me. And I told them, I didn't fall down. I told them what had happened. And then they explained what racism was to me. And I'd never even heard the word racism. Why would I? Because I was around people from all over the world and we all got along. There was no difference except for maybe, language. But other than that, we played together, worked together, had slumber parties together, all that kind of stuff. So I never experienced racism until then. And I could not believe what my parents were telling me, because it made absolutely no sense to me that, my 10-year-old brain just could not process the idea of hurting somebody just because of the color of their skin. So that's how that whole quest started.
For a lot of my black friends I've talked to, their parents talked to them at earlier ages. Do you think that kind of helped you be more curious about learning about it, and obviously dedicating your life to finding out, asking questions about it?
Yeah, because that was 1968 when I was 10. Mm-hmm. And I did not believe my parents at first, because I had a lot of white friends. I had white American friends from the American embassy overseas, my little French friends, my little Australian friends, German, Swedish, whatever, right? And they treated me fine. And these people on the sidewalk who were throwing things did not look any different to me than my other white friends. Or for that matter, my white friends, from my class at my elementary school who treated me fine. So something was wrong with this explanation that my parents were giving me, that there are people who don't like you because of the color of your skin. I just could not accept that. I didn't believe it. Well, shortly thereafter, on April the 4th of that same year, 1968, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And every major city in this country burned to the ground, sort of like what we're seeing, these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that this new word that I had learned, racism, was in fact a real thing. But I didn't understand why. I understood that racism existed, but I didn't know why it existed. Why do you hate someone when you don't know them? And that question has plagued me all into my adulthood, which I believe steered me on the path that I've gone on. Now, I will say this. Perhaps if my first experience with white people had not been, traveling abroad and meeting white people from all over the world and, whatever, and my first experience had been having, rocks and bottles thrown at me, would I be doing this journey? Probably not.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so important that you asked the question why. I think that's we see it and it's obvious that it's happening, but why is it happening, and how do we
Right.
stop it? And to have that kind of insight at such a young age, I think is so important. I'm sure played a huge role in the quest you took after that. And just for some background, Daryl's excellent and famous musician, and has then gone on and written several books about the Klan, about the Ku Klux Klan. So if you just want to talk more about that experience and what started getting you into, learning about the KKK and kind of your early experiences around that.
Okay. Well, starting as a teenager, I was still plagued by that question: how can you hate me when you don't even know me? Mm-hmm. And I began buying books on Black supremacy, white supremacy, anti-Semitism, the Ku Klux Klan, the Nazis in Germany, the neo-Nazis over here, trying to get an answer to that question. Now, all the books that I just mentioned, they all talked about racism, but they didn't give me the reason behind it, why. So they didn't answer the question. But I learned a lot about supremacy, and who does what and what they believe, but not why. So I graduated college with my degree in music and became a professional musician. So I was playing in a country band one night and in an all-white bar. And when I say all-white, not that Black people could not go in there, but they did not go in there by their own choice. And it was a good choice because they were not welcome. So I was in there, and on the break, a white gentleman approached me and praised my piano playing and remarked that it was the first time he'd ever heard a Black man play the piano like Jerry Lee Lewis. And I was rather surprised that he did not know the Black origin of Jerry Lee's style. So I explained it to him, and he didn't believe me. No, Jerry Lee invented that. Yeah, never seen no Black man play like that except for you. I assured him, I said, look, man, I know Jerry Lee Lewis. He's a friend of mine. He's told me himself about the guys he used to go see play when he was a teenager and kid, sneaking around to Black bars and watching these guys play. The guy didn't believe that either. So, but he was fascinated enough with me that he wanted me to come back to his table and have a drink. So I did. And then he announced that this was the first time he'd ever sat down and had a drink with a Black man. And now I'm like really curious, because you're talking to somebody who's been all over the world, met with people from anywhere and everywhere, the far sides of the earth to right next door. And on the other side of the table is a guy who's never been anywhere. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't make one person better than the other. It just, they just live in two different worlds, that's all. So anyway, I didn't relate to his world. I could not imagine somebody, if you were to tell me you've never sat down before and had a conversation with a Black guy, I find it hard to believe. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I asked him why, and 'cause I had no clue, and he didn't answer me. I asked him again, and he had a buddy sitting next to him who elbowed him in the side and kept saying, "Tell him, tell him." And he finally looked at me and said, "I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan." Now I burst out laughing because I did not believe him. As I told you, I have just about every book written on the Klan,
Right.
and I've read them all. And none of the books talk about how a Klansman will come up and embrace a black guy and want to buy him a drink and hang out and talk. It doesn't work that way. So I figured the guy is, pulling one over on me, and I'm laughing. And he goes inside his wallet and hands me his Klan membership card. And I recognize the Klan insignia, which is a red circle with a white cross and a red blood drop in the center of the cross. And I stopped laughing. It wasn't funny anymore. And now I'm wondering, why in the hell am I sitting here at this table with a Klansman? But he was very friendly, and he was genuinely interested in me and how I learned to play piano like that. It just fascinated him. So, we became, friends more or less. But I quit that band at the end of the year, and a long time passed. And it finally dawned, and during that time, after I quit the band, I lost contact with the guy because I had no reason to see him anymore, right? I only saw him when I played up there. Well, he'd given me his phone number. He wanted me to call him whenever I played there. And he was going to bring Klansmen and Klanswomen, his friends, to come see this black guy play piano like Jerry Lee. So I'd call him and he'd show up. But when I quit the band, I stopped calling him, right? And it dawned on me much time later, Daryl, you blew it. The answer to your question that's been plaguing you since age 10, how can you hate me when you don't even know me, fell right into your lap. Who better to ask than someone who would go so far as to join a group that practices hating people who don't look like them and who don't believe as they believe? Get back in contact with that guy and get him to set you up with the Klan leader for the state and some other Klan members, and then interview them, go up north, go down south, go to the Midwest and the West Coast and interview other Klan leaders and members and write a book, because there had been no books written by a black author on the Ku Klux Klan from the perspective of sitting down with them and having a one-on-one conversation. All those books were written by white authors. So I figured, okay, that's what I'll do. And that's how it started.
Yeah, and it's really, it makes sense that they've all been written by white authors, and because most of these Klan members probably never met, like you said, a black person, never had the opportunity to, and
unless they're doing something nefarious.
right. And I think when I was, researching a little more background on you and learning a little bit more about the Klan, it was eye-opening for me. I grew up in majority white town, went to majority white high school. I always had black friends from sports, but I never really learned about the Klan. And it wasn't prominent, obviously, in Long Island where I was, but I was shocked to see how big of an organization it is, how well organized of an organization it is, and I think it's pretty eye-opening to hear if you don't know a lot about it. So I just want to kind of walk through that and like the organizational structure and size of the Klan.
Okay, well, the Klan was born in 1865, right at the end of the Civil War. And it became so violent that Congress enacted what was called the Ku Klux Klan Acts of 1871. And it suppressed the Klan. And it kind of like died down, went underground. And then in 1915, it was reborn. A movie had come out called Birth of a Nation. And that sparked a interest in revitalizing the Klan. So that was your second wave. Now, how it works is this. Back then, there was the Ku Klux Klan, one Ku Klux Klan, and there were chapters of that Klan, all in various states around the country. Over time, that central structure fragmented. Now, let me explain. Okay, let's go back to the central structure for a second. The leader of the Klan, the highest person, is called the Imperial Wizard. All right, Imperial means national. So anybody who has that word Imperial before their title means they're a national officer, wizard being the top. An imperial caliph is like a vice president. And you would have a secretary, which is an imperial clygrap, imperial chaplain, which is an imperial clud, on and on, treasurer, etc. Then below the president or the wizard, you have state leaders, what we call governors.
Yeah.
So each state in which there's a chapter has this leader, and the state leader is called the Grand Dragon, and the Grand Dragon reports to the imperial wizard.
Right.
So within the state, you have counties. So the county also each county has a leader if there's a chapter there in the county, and the county leader is known as the Great Titan. Anybody great is on the county level. Anybody grand is on the state level. Anybody imperial is on the national level. Within the county, you have districts, and they're called claverns. And so, like, you have districts in your county, and you have a representative for that district, and you call that person a council member or an alderman or something like that. They call theirs an exalted cyclops, and then below the cyclops are just plain rank and file clan members. So that's how the structure works. Now, over time, there's been a lot of infighting where people get disgruntled with the leadership. Oftentimes, the leaders will embezzle money. People pay their dues, every dues period. And next thing you know, one of the leaders is driving a fancy new car that he can't afford. So what's going on? He's pocketing some of that dues money.
Right.
And so they get upset, and they break away from and form their own clan. So now today, there is no such thing as the Ku Klux Klan. There are many Ku Klux Klans, and they all have the same structure, basically the same bylaws. They believe in the same things. They wear the same colors on their robes that designate their rank. If somebody is on the imperial level, they usually wear either a white robe with purple stripes and a purple cape, or blue stripes and a blue cape, or a full satin purple robe, or a full satin blue robe. Blue and purple are the imperial colors. Mm-hmm. If the person is on the grand level, like a grand dragon, a grand whatever, it'll usually be either a full green satin robe or a white robe with green stripes and green sash and a green cape. There's no difference between the satin and the cotton. It's just a matter of preference. If it's satin, the whole robe is the same color. If it's cotton, it's a white cotton robe with the different color adornments on it.
The names are comically absurd. I can't imagine a grown man looking in the mirror.
Well, actually, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but here's where it comes from. The original members who formed the Ku Klux Klan, who founded it, they were of Irish and Scottish descent and had been Masons. So if you know anything about the Freemasons, the Scottish Rite, which is not Klan at all, but they're a secret society and secret group, and they have all those kinds of names, similar, Grand Poobah of this and Grand, whatever, exalted so and so. So what they did was they simply appropriated those, similar type names and applied it to their organization. Right. Which is not to say that every Mason is a Klansman. Not, absolutely not.
For sure. Yeah, it sounds almost like a religion. I mean, this stuff's been passed down.
Yeah. Well, they consider themselves to be a Christian organization for white people.
Interesting. Interesting. Don't remember. I don't know if Jesus would agree with them with a lot of the things they do, but
right.
I guess it only matters what they think of themselves to them. But if you it's fascinating, just from the outside looking in, not knowing much about it ever, to learn all this stuff almost over the past couple of weeks, really just digging into this.
But the Grand Dragon of New York, I knew him. Really? Very, very dangerous individual, but he became a friend of mine. His name was Bill Hoff, William Hoff, Hoff, and he was right there in New York City. And there was a chapter out there on Long Island in, was it Jamaica, Long Island, in that area? Yeah. But Bill Hoff was always in trouble for bombing stuff, and there were some deaths that he was not convicted of, but pointed in his direction. You
A,
know,
a lot of these people are just kind of are normal people, right? Like they have regular jobs and
well, I wouldn't call them normal people. I would say um, they're human beings for sure,
for sure.
but they have abnormal ways of thinking.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, you know, they do function like anybody else. You know, they have a job, they drive a car, they want, you know, good education for their kids, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And they range anywhere from third grade dropout all the way to president of the United States.
Mhm.
You know, so there are all kinds of educational levels there.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to diving into a little more of the psychology and beliefs about them. But normal on the surface, and you pass them on the on the subway, and you wouldn't
Right.
think anything of it, or have a conversation with one of them at a bar, and you wouldn't think anything of it. Um, but I just think that before we dive into the beliefs part of it, the story, how you actually when you started writing the book, and is just fascinating. So if you just want to like start there, talk about like I know the whole hotel incident, and then we can go from there.
Okay. So I wanted to interview, I was going to start right here where I live now. I live in Maryland. I'm not from Maryland. I'm from Chicago originally, but I live in Maryland. And I was going to start with the Grand Dragon for the state of Maryland, state leader. And so I managed to get his phone number and address and stuff. And I was told by the person who gave it to me, his name was Roger Kelly, the Grand Dragon from Maryland. I was told, do not fool with Roger Kelly. He will kill you. And I'm like, well, that's the whole reason I need to fool with him. I need to find out, you know, why would he kill me? Just because I'm Black. I mean, what is going through his head? This is what I'm after, that information. So the guy begged and pleaded with me not to fool with the guy, but I was determined to do it. And so anyway, I had the phone number that he had given me, and I decided not to call him myself because he might pick up in my voice that I'm Black and then hang up the phone saying, you know, I'm not gonna talk to you. And then my whole project of writing this book and interviewing these people would have ended right there, you know? So I figured I'll have my white secretary call him because he would know by her voice that she's white. And he would not automatically assume that a white woman was working for a Black man. That just would not register, especially a Black man who's writing a book on the Klan, because they did not exist. So I asked her to call him, and I instructed her not to tell Mr. Kelly that I was Black. And she understood. So I said, but you know, if he asks, don't lie to him. You just don't give him reason to ask you what color I am. So she called, he did not ask, and he agreed to do the interview. So we set up, well, first he had invited us over to his house, and something came up for me on that day. So I had to have her call him and change the appointment. So we rescheduled it for the following week, and in this motel. So Mary and I, secretary, got there super early, like several hours early, got a room, and I sent her down the hallway with some money to get soda pop out of the machine and fill up the ice bucket and put the soda in there and get it cold, you know, so I'd be able to offer this man a cold beverage when he arrived. Mm-hmm. I had no idea what he was going to do when he saw me. I knew he was going to freak out because I knew he'd probably be expecting a white guy, and he got me. But would he attack me? Would he walk away and not do the interview? Or would he come in and have a seat and do the interview? But in any event, regardless of what he was going to do, I wanted to be hospitable and offer him a cold drink. So we got all that set up. So we're all set waiting for him. And there was a knock on the door right on time. And Mary got up and went around the corner and opened the door. And in walked what is known as the Grand Nighthawk. Nighthawk means bodyguard in Klan terminology. And Grand, of course, would be the state, you know. So Grand Nighthawk for the Grand Dragon. And this guy walks in. He's wearing like military camouflage with that Klan patch on his chest, the initials KKK on the other side, and embroidered on his beret, it said Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. And he had a semi-automatic, which was a Glock 19 on his hip. And he comes in first. Mr. Kelly is right behind him in a dark blue suit and tie. And the Nighthawk turned the corner and saw me sitting in the room and just freaked. He just like froze in place. And Mr. Kelly could not see around the Nighthawk and didn't realize that he had stopped short. So he like walked right into his back and knocked him forward. So now they both are stumbling around trying to regain their balance. And I'm just sitting at the table watching them. And I can read faces pretty well. And the faces spelled out to me what was going on. They were thinking, did the desk clerk downstairs give us the wrong room number? Do we misunderstand something? Or is this an ambush? And I saw the apprehension. So I stood up and I displayed my palms so that they could see I was holding nothing. And I walked forward and I extended my right hand and I said, "Hi, Mr. Kelly, I'm Daryl Davis." And Mr. Kelly shook my hand, as did the Nighthawk. So far, so good. Nobody ran away or whatever. I invited them to come on in and have a seat. And Mr. Kelly sat down and the Nighthawk stood at attention on his right side. And then I had to show my ID to him. And then I sat down and I put the cassette recorder in the middle of this table so I could record the interview. And he said it would be okay. I had this bag sitting beside me in which I had the cassette recorder, a little black canvas bag. And so I also had a copy of the Bible in the bag because the Klan justifies their beliefs because they claim the Bible preaches this. It preaches separation of the races and all kinds of stuff, which I've never seen in the Bible, all right? And I'm a Christian too. So I wanted to be able to, reach down, pull out my Bible and say, "Here, Mr. Kelly, please show me chapter and verse where it says blacks and whites must be separate." So I'm all prepared and I had blank cassettes there. So we're talking and carrying on. And every time I reach in the bag, because the cassette ran out of tape or he made some biblical reference, when I reach down, the Nighthawk would reach up to his gun and put his hand on the butt of the gun. And, which I understood. I mean, that's his job. Right. He is there to protect his boss. And he has no idea what's in my bag. And as far as they're concerned, I'm the enemy. So I get it. So I didn't have a problem with that. And then after a while, he relaxed. He realized, there was no threat in the bag. And I went down, up, and he never even moved. So a little over an hour into our conversation, there was just a very fast noise, just like, shh. That was all there was to it. And we were just talking and that noise came out of nowhere. And because it happened so fast and only lasted a split second, my ear could not tell what it was. I couldn't figure it out. But all in that split second, I sensed danger. Number one, I'm a black guy. I'm sitting with the head of the Klan for the state in a room, which is unusual anyway. I had already been told by somebody else not to fool with this guy because he'd kill me. So I'm all those things are going through my head. And I'm trying to figure out what did I just do or say to cause Mr. Kelly to go off and make some bizarre noise? Because I was convinced that he made that noise. Why? Because I didn't make it. So if I didn't make it, he had to have made it, right? You always try to blame somebody else unless you know for a fact that you did it.
Of course.
So anyway, I was convinced that he did it, and he's making some weird noise. He's a Klansman. He doesn't like me. He'd kill me. So I'm reacting, and I went into survival mode because when you fear for your life, that's where you go. And there are only a few things you can do in survival mode to protect yourself. Some people simply faint. They pass out because the fear that is put on them is so great, their brain cannot process it, and the brain shuts down, and they fall out, and they're out. You get some smelling salts or something, bring them back. Other people, their muscles will constrict, and they'll tighten up and start shaking, and they can't move. That's called paralysis by fear. They become paralyzed by the fear. I don't do that either. And the third thing people will do, not in any particular order, I'm just saying these things. is to run away. You get scared, you run away. Just like, if you've ever seen videos of a crowd and somebody hears a gunshot, everybody starts running, the other way. Mm-hmm. That is the best option, to as quickly as you can separate yourself from the source of fear. Get the hell out of there. Yep. And that would have been what I would have done if I had that option. But you cannot outrun a bullet in a motel room. Nope. So, yeah, right. So that option was off the table. And the other option you have is to do a preemptive strike. Get them before they get you. And that's where I had flown up out of my seat. I was going to dive across that table and grab the Nighthawk, grab Mr. Kelly, and slam them down to the ground and take away the Nighthawk's gun. That's how quickly I was thinking. Because I didn't want to die that day. And it's my job to protect myself and my secretary, right? So when I came up and hit the table, I was looking right at Mr. Kelly, right into his eyes. And I didn't say a word to him, but my eyes were questioning him. And I knew he could read my eyes. My eyes were saying to him, what did you just do? And his eyes were questioning me. He didn't say anything either. His eyes were saying to me, what did you just do? And the bodyguard had his hand on his gun. He never pulled it out, but he was ready. He had his hand on his gun, and he was looking back and forth between both of us, like, what did either one of you guys just do? And so Mary was sitting to my left on top of the dresser because there were no more chairs in the room. And she realized what had happened, and she began explaining it to us, and then it happened again. What was happening was the ice in the ice bucket had begun to melt, and the cans of soda were shifting in the ice. And so, like that. Mm-hmm. And we all began laughing, all of us, at how ignorant we all had been. And, and think about it, how stupid and ridiculous. It's like a Three Stooges thing, Somebody almost got themselves killed or hurt over a piece of ice.
Such an important point of this story, and it's like my favorite part. Just the fear you both felt because you didn't know, and I think you see it so often today with everything going on, and hearing Black people's experiences with police on both sides, that they have this fear, and it makes you the fight or flight is one of the oldest psychological things in our brain.
Yeah.
Forever.
Well, you said it just a second ago. You said, they had that. We both had that fear because we didn't know. Right. That's exactly it. To not know means that you're ignorant. Mm-hmm. You're unaware. I don't mean ignorant in a derogatory sense. No. I mean in its true definition. Being unaware, not having knowledge of, ignorant. Okay. The ignorance creates fear. We fear those things we don't know, right? Especially if they happen out of place or something. And if that fear is not harnessed and suppressed, that fear will escalate and create hatred because we hate the things that frighten us. If we do not keep that hatred in check, that hatred in turn will escalate and create destruction. And that's what we almost saw. We stopped short of that last component, destruction. But we saw the ignorance, because none of us knew what was going on. We saw the fear, okay? We saw the hatred come out real quick, and we almost saw the destruction. Now, we did see all of that happen 3 years ago on August 12th in Charlottesville, where there was a lot of ignorance, a lot of fear, and a lot of hatred, which culminated in destruction when a white supremacist got inside his vehicle and tried to murder as many counter-protesters as he could by driving full force into the crowd. He succeeded in injuring 20 people and murdering one young lady named Heather Heyer, right? So there it is. Ignorance breeds fear, breeds hatred, breeds destruction. Now, this is universal. It doesn't matter how old you are, how old I am, or even little kids. It's the same thing. Because I'll give you an example. true example. The same feelings
Mhm.
work on children as well. I often talk to elementary school kids or middle school kids, and I'll be standing in their classroom. Just, I'll be giving them a lecture, but I tone it down, of course,
Mhm.
from, my college lectures or whatever. But I'll be talking casually with them, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I'll say, hey, there's a snake under your chair. And I'll point to somebody in the front row. And people even rose back, scream and throw their legs up in the air, just at the thought of a snake being on the ground under somebody in the front row's chair.
Mhm.
Everybody reacts and puts
Yeah.
their legs up and begins screaming. And what I'm hearing is, so then I say to them, they realize there's no snake. And everybody starts laughing, and they're wondering why I did that. And I say to them, well, why did you scream? What was up? And they all say, oh, I hate snakes. I'm afraid of snakes. They scare me. Well, there's your hate. There's your fear. All right. And I say to them, well, wait a minute. Let's talk about this. Why do you hate them? Why are you afraid of them? Oh, well, they're slimy. They're poisonous. Well, there's your ignorance. If you ever touch the snake, it's not slimy, it's dry. And not all snakes are poisonous. Some are good snakes. So again, there's your ignorance. The ignorance, because they don't know, as you put it, the ignorance creates the fear, creates the hatred. And then I say to them, look here, we know there was no snake under the chair. I was just joking. But let's just suppose that there really was a snake under your chair when I told you there was one. What would you want me to do about it? You know what they say? Kill it. Yeah. There's your destruction. And these are little kids.
And you can see it but you can see it in yourself too. I think most people out there have these little fears that don't really make sense. Like for me, like it's mice. Like I apartment in Manhattan, every once in a while we'll get a little mouse, harmless. Right. If I saw it in the cage, it'd probably be cute. But when it runs out from my refrigerator, I freak out, and I how to get let's get the kill traps, let's get it out of here. And I ask myself why. Especially, I'm questioning all these beliefs. Why? And my mom's terrified of mice. When I was younger, I'm sure I had an encounter or two with a mouse where she freaked out, and I learned it from there. And it doesn't make sense really, because it's at the end of the day pretty harmless. But and you can see it in so many different fears that really, spiders and this or that, and it just don't make sense when you look at it on the surface.
And exactly, so that's when logic kicks in. Mm-hmm. But if we're unable to leave our emotion and go to logic, then that's where we stay.
Right.
So there was that was a teaching moment. It wasn't a learning moment, but it was a teaching moment. Now, now let's move into modern day a little bit. Normally, how you correct behavior on the lower level is you got to tighten up the management up top, right? If it's a police department or a corporation, if the management is screwing up upstairs, then you can expect your employees down on the floor or on the street to be screwing up too, because they take their cues from the top. It's all trickle down, right?
We take from authority.
Huh?
We take instructions from authority. Our beliefs come from.
Exactly. But with racism, you can't do it that way. You can't structure it like that and trickle it down. It has to be cured bottom up. And I'll give you an example. Forget about the destruction. Once something is destroyed, it's not coming back. Mm-hmm. Like George Floyd is not coming back. The next level down would be the hatred. That is just a symptom. Forget about that. The next level down is the fear, another symptom. Forget about it. Go to the root cause. The root cause is ignorance, not knowing. If you cure the ignorance, then there's nothing to fear because you know, right? If you cure the ignorance, there's nothing to fear. With nothing to fear, there's nothing to hate because we hate what frightens us. With nothing to hate, there's nothing to destroy. So forget about all those symptoms, go to the root cause. If you have cancer in your bone, you can't rub a topical cream on top or put a Band-Aid on top. You got to go down to the bone to address it. The good thing is that there is a cure for ignorance. That cure is called education and exposure, right? Because the people who are ignorant, and we all are ignorant about something, you know, it can be fixed if we learn about it. Like, for example, you know, I'm not an auto mechanic. I'm ignorant when it comes to changing spark plugs and so forth and so on. But I could be taught, you know. So, and that probably save some money. But anyway, we should focus on the bottom, not the top. And that way it will trickle up.
I couldn't agree more. And there's so many issues where just ignorance is the root cause. And, you know, you just look at religions, people hate other people of different religions purely because they don't know them. They don't understand them. They've never met one. And if they did meet one, they judge them from the beginning and cast them down.
Yeah. And look at it. We even, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a major problem in our country, where we get our education from, or lack thereof. The two biggest places where people get their information and shape their character is school, you know, because you're in school as a kid for 12 years, right? And you're there from 8 in the morning to 2:30 or whatever, so 6 hours at least, sometimes 7. Schools and churches. And when I say churches, I mean religious institutions. It could be a synagogue, a mosque, a temple, whatever. So here's what happens. Every religion, whether you're Catholic, Protestant, Mormon, Jewish, whatever, has some form of Sunday school, and which is usually held down in the basement of your place, right? And as a kid, we all learn that God made a rainbow of different colors, and we're all God's children, and he loves us all. We're supposed to love one another, and so forth and so on. And we learn that all through our young years, right? You know, all different colors, God loves us all, blah, blah, blah. And then when we get old enough, we get kicked out of Sunday school and kicked upstairs to the main congregation where we sit with our folks and stuff. Here's the problem. The clergy, whether it's a priest, a minister, a pastor, a rabbi, whatever, that person stops preaching the Sunday school lesson. He or she no longer continues that lesson, because the people in the pews out there, the congregation, they don't want to hear that. What do you think would happen if, let's say, a Catholic priest gets up in the pulpit and announces to the congregation, "Hey, folks, it's okay, you know, if you all want to marry Jewish people, that's fine. Go ahead and do it." You know, or a rabbi says, "Hey, it's okay for you all to marry, you know, Muslims or Protestants or whatever, Gentiles, whatever." Half the congregation's gonna get up and walk out, or they're gonna fire that
run them out of town.
Run them out of town. But one thing's for damn sure, nobody's gonna be pulling out their wallet and putting money in the collection plate.
Right.
You do not pay for what you don't want to hear.
Right.
You know? So what is the sign of a good pastor or rabbi or minister or whatever? Is someone who can bring money into the church, who's charismatic, and you know, and people in the congregation say, "You know what, man, I like the way that guy preaches. Man, I like that sermon today. Here's $20 in the plate." You know, that's why you try to get a good guy in there who can really interact with his people, right, and bring in that money. Okay, so what's happening is the clergy person is putting money over morality. And that's wrong, because they know that we're still God's children. God did make that rainbow, and God loves us all, and we're supposed to love one another. But he's not going to say that to the congregation, because he has to make them put money in the collection plate. So why are they not concerned about Sunday school? Because those kids in Sunday school don't have any money. No collection plate is passed around in Sunday school. But the people in the congregation, they're working. And as Christians, we're supposed to give 10%, you know, of our earnings as tithes and offerings to our church. So that's why they focus on that money.
it's crazy to think about it. And you said good, I would say a successful, bringing in the money. And because it's inherently not good for the people they're talking to. They're just reconfirming, people want their beliefs to be reconfirmed, and the things that they think are reconfirmed, and that's purely what they're doing, and then people feel good and give money. And
Yeah.
Certainly not good for those people who now have reconfirmed their beliefs that don't serve them, whether it's I don't like gay people, and how many gay people are out there who you could be friends with and who could help you, and who could be there for you, and so it's not serving those people. It's making them angry, and like you've already went through beautifully, ignorance leads to fear, which leads to hatred and then destruction. And we just see so much constant destruction in our world on so many different issues. Especially our generation, we see it constantly on social media, and since the time we're little, and just constant destruction. It takes a toll on your mental health, and
Sure.
on your happiness, on people around you, their happiness, because everything's a ripple effect. So such a huge issue, and I think you get it better than anyone, that empathy is the answer, and empathy and education, learning about people, learning about their experiences,